two different foods that you've touched on there, which are often demonized. Red meat.
Yeah.
Is it killing everybody?
Well, again, what's the dietary pattern? Are you eating a ton of really fatty meats? Bacon, butter is usually thrown into that group, even though it's not a meat, but it's commonly
it's a side of a meat.
Right. Tons of ribeyes. And are you susceptible? You know, what's your body composition? What's your exercise look like? Are you consuming sufficient fiber?
Well, let's say that someone is not a total renegade with this, and they realize that they shouldn't be eating super fatty cuts of meat, that they shouldn't be cooking it in tons and tons of butter, that they shouldn't be having bags and bags and bags of bacon. There is a movement at the moment, guys like Brian Johnson, who are mTOR, activating the mTOR pathway is a nightmare. I avoid meat, red meat specifically. There is concerns from the FDA. There is concerns from all manner of people who are experts in some circles with regards to diet that say red meat is something that you should have once a month at the absolute most.
Yeah.
Why? What is it that you're seeing that they're not?
Well, you mentioned, what was the first one you mentioned? Oh, mTOR stimulation. Well, that there's a difference between acute and chronic inflammation or mTOR stimulation. And the acute inflammation or stimulation of mTOR doesn't seem to be a problem. And that would be the same of protein in general. It wouldn't be specific to red meat. Any protein would stimulate mTOR. And the problem that you get is that as we age, we become anabolically resistant at some point, or less and less anabolically sensitive. And a lot of people as they age suffer from, they don't eat enough protein and they suffer from sarcopenia. And that can be a bigger problem for mortality risk than consuming red meat or any meat there, you know, for that matter. And I think if I'm citing the right person, I think Kevin Hall has done a lot of research on that and opposes that theory. That longevity theory, I think that comes a little bit from Sinclair, a little bit from Walter Longo, those folks. You know, it's a lot of mouse studies. We have no human evidence, no human outcome trials showing that is going to limit lifespan. The problem with a lot of that research is it's usually influenced by the healthy user bias. People who tend to eat more red meat tend to smoke more, drink more, weigh more, exercise less. And they eat all the things that are associated with it. You know, the bacon double cheeseburgers with the bun and the soda pop and the fries. And, you know, and the dessert with that and maybe a couple of beers. That's obviously, you know, they try and control for that in some of the epidemiology. It's imperfect. And they try and stratify the risk based on other health markers. But for the most part, again, as part of a healthy diet, keeping your, you know, watching your LDLs. I guess the only other concern would be cancer. And that you mentioned that World Health Organization, you may have mentioned, and IARC. I find it interesting now. We've got this big blowback on aspartame. IARC came out and said that aspartame was associated with cancer risk.
What's your read on that?
Well, my read is that they look at mouse studies and with huge doses, and it's not their job to look at doses. And so,
what was the? Do you know what the relative? How much a human is it? Would I have had to have consumed 3.5 cases of Dr. Pepper?
It was something like 800 Cokes or something
a day.
Yeah, to get that level of aspartame. But the point of that story is that, and none of the nutrition PhDs, which is the people that I usually turn my ear towards when things like this come out, none of them consider this to be a concern. We do have plenty of human trials, randomized control trials, showing evidence that when you replace sugar-sweetened beverages with diet sodas, you see weight loss and therefore improved health outcomes.
Right. Let's just dig in this for 1 second. This is something that came up with a bunch of different stories I've heard from you. A lot of the time, people will demonize the thing which is seemingly less natural. It's got a name like aspartame instead of sugar.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is that the weight loss from switching from sugar to aspartame is so significant that tons and tons of downstream benefits for health come from that.
Yeah. And
it seems like the concern from aspartame has to be at dosages so insane that you would essentially be hooked up to an IV, like Warren Buffett's nightmare.
Yeah.
just pumping it into your veins.
It's nothing for anybody to worry about. You hit on an interesting point there when I talk about the importance of the overall dietary pattern and then your general physical health. Weight loss, I said this on a podcast not too long ago, and it was clipped and thrown onto the internet, just a little clip of it. And I said that 95% of health benefits are realized strictly from weight loss itself, irrespective of diet. And I referenced the McDonald's diet. We have multiple studies now, the McDonald's diet, the Twinkie diet, the 7-Eleven diet, where when people eat even a lot of quote unquote crappy food, junk food, fast food, when they're able to maintain a calorie deficit and lose weight, they see decreases in all of their biomarkers. They see lowered cholesterol, lowered blood sugar, lowered blood pressure, and weight loss itself, we know, is associated with decreased cancer risk. So that should be the primary goal, weight loss. Obviously, those kinds of diets long-term, particularly if they're high in saturated fats and maybe your LDL starts to go up eventually, potentially if you're not exercising or if you lose a significant amount of lean muscle mass because you're not lifting weights. So there's a whole host of problems. At the end of that, I said I would never recommend a McDonald's diet. That gets clipped out.
Internet, please leave that bit in.
Yeah, which
time.
We've touched on already, is satiety being the key of reason for that is that the best diet's the one you'll follow. And hunger is the biggest reason why people will fail on a diet. That's why I keep going back to satiety.
When you're looking at the highly processed, very calorie-dense foods, that if you were to do the McDonald's diet, and it is possible to lose weight on it, I think it was 1,800 calories, 1,850, something like that.
Yeah. You'd be very hungry.
Precisely. Yeah. Because think about how dense those calories are. Think about how little food you get for those 1,800 calories. I mean, it's probably a medium meal, maybe a large meal with a Coke, a full-fat Coke would be...
It wouldn't be a lot of food.
Yep.
It'd be, like you say, maybe a cheeseburger, probably. I think he had to eat half of this, half of that to get through the day. But nonetheless, the point is that the weight loss is the primary goal. And we see this with a lot of diets, a lot of diet tribes. We see this with keto. And my goal here isn't to shit on anybody's diet plan. There's many paths to the same destination. And I believe they're all very individualistic. And the best path is the one that seems the least restrictive, so you can adhere to it long term. And some people like to lower their carbs. Some people like to eliminate. I guess we should just say there's three paths. There's not many paths. There's three paths to dieting. All of them result in a calorie deficit. One is calorie restriction. That's where you're counting calories and you're checking the labels and you're weighing and measuring food and you're using your little, your computer or your phone to track your calories. That's one method of controlling calories. The other one is time restriction. And that's, you're just going to eat like with a 16/8. Or maybe that doesn't work for you. You got to go to an 18/6 or a 24 until you just can't eat enough calories in your window to gain weight and you start losing weight. The other one would be dietary restriction. And that's where you start eliminating foods. That would be a keto, get rid of carbs. That would be a vegan, get rid of meats. That would be a paleo, get rid of everything that was, created after 1960 or something like that.
Gravitarian, everything that didn't fall to the ground at its own accord.
Yeah. So those are your options, and you pick one if you may, or find something that works, or a combination of the two. The intermittent fasting keto diet became real popular as a 1-2 punch for a while. But how sustainable are they for you? And different people have different long-term results, but the research shows none of them are any better than the other long-term.
This episode is brought to you by Levels. One of the single biggest predictors of how long you live and how good you'll feel while living is your metabolic health. The single best way to work out how your daily decisions are impacting your longevity and your vitality is by tracking your glucose. This is why I wear a continuous glucose monitor from Levels. It allows me to understand in real time how the foods that I'm eating are impacting my health and the way that I feel. The Levels app interprets your glucose data and gives you a score after each meal so that you can see how different meals are impacting you, and it will give you personalized diet recommendations that are right for your body. Glucose is a huge determinant of not only your vitality and your longevity, but of the way that you feel day to day. Using Levels means that you take the guesswork out of this. It can help you to nudge your diet towards something which is going to be better for you right now and in the long term as well. After using Levels, I realized that if I have a large carb meal and I do not go for a walk afterwards, my blood blood glucose goes through the roof, and I don't feel so good. Head to levels.link/modernwisdom to take advantage of an exclusive offer, plus get that 90-day money-back guarantee. That's levels.link/modernwisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip with Stan, then press here for the full-length 2.5-hour podcast episode. Go on. Press it.